Hello, and welcome back to Language, Culture, and Dr. Lou. And today I wanted to take a sneak peek at the ballot for the 2024 election. And I thought, well, if I'm taking a peek at this, I might as well share it on YouTube. And by the way, if you want to peek at your own local ballot, is probably available at your local county's Board of Elections. That's where I found mine. So let's take a peek. And so I live in Albany, New York, which is where I vote. And so this is a ballot, a sample ballot from the Albany County Board of Elections. And so we have, of course, three races on here that affect federal politics. And two that affect state politics, and then five other races that are much more local in nature. Um, and so, first of all, when I was looking at this ballot, the first thing I noticed is that the Green Party doesn't have a ballot line on there. There's not a single candidate for the Green Party on this ballot. Same goes for the Libertarians. And why not? Because New York State um, recently raised the threshold of how many votes you have to get in a given election to automatically have access to the ballot the next time around. And this was part of Andrew Cuomo, our former Governor Cuomo, his war on the Working Families Party. And because they endorsed Cynthia Nixon for governor in 2018. And so he got all mad about that. And so basically, the state increased the threshold for how many votes you have to get in an election from 50,000 up to 130,000, I think, or 2% of the overall voter turnout, whichever one is higher. And so the Green Party and the Libertarian Party, the Libertarians did not meet that threshold last time around, so they're absent from the ballot this year. So talking about the presidential election, since there's no Green Party line, that means no option to vote for Jill Stein, the Green Party's candidate, for anybody who is registered in New York State, unless, of course, we write her in. You can see there's a little write-in spot for every race. So if you wanted to vote Jill Stein from the Green Party, I suppose you would have to write her in there. And speaking of the presidential election, who else? What other candidate is not on the ballot? RFK Jr. And his party is called We the People, but he's not on the ballot because the courts found that his application to be on the ballot was invalid because he used an incorrect home address, well, a false home address, because he really resides in California, but he'd put a New York address for his residence on the application, and so they took him off the ballot. So no RFK Jr. and no Jill Stein on the ballot, which leaves for New Yorkers only two choices. Unless you're going to write somebody else in, you only have Kamala Harris for president and Tim Walz for vice president, or Donald Trump for president and JD Vance for vice president. And that's the only choice you have. Although you see four lines on there, there's only two options. And that's another thing I notice about this ballot is that, do you see how for nearly every single race, the Working Families Party is endorsing the exact same person as the Democratic Party. Actually, that's for every single race on this screen. And for nearly every race except one where the Conservative Party didn't nominate anybody, the ones they did nominate are the same exact ones that the Republicans nominated. So that I was sort of disappointed about with the lack of choice on this ballot, but I guess in a way it makes it simpler. Choose A or B. Mm. And the only one where we really have a third party, a truly independent candidate, is in the race for state senator. And so we have Kirsten Gillibrand as our current senator, who is up for re-election this year or not. Somebody else could take her place. And so this is important to the Democrats because the Democrats have a very slight majority in the Senate. They have a very slight control on the Senate. And by the way, the Senate Majority Leader is Chuck Schumer. He's also a senator from New York State. Um, and so the Democrats are really going to want Kirsten Gillibrand and all the other Dems to hold on to their seats in the Senate, because there are um, plenty of Senate seats up to for re-election this year. I think 34. Anyway, but there are lots of them. So if you're not in New York State, you're more likely than not you have another Senate race going on in your state, and the uh the struggle between Democrats and Republicans to maintain control or gain control is the same. And we got a similar thing going on in the House of Representatives, where the Republicans now have a slight majority in the House, and they don't want to lose it, right? And so we have Paul Tonko, who is the incumbent. He's the person who's been holding this seat. And so he's a staunch progressive Democrat. Uh, and he's been holding this seat for well over a decade, I'm pretty sure. And he's going to want to maintain this too because the Democrats really want to take back a majority in their House of Representatives, which they lost last time. Because in New York, 4 Congress seats flipped from Democrats to Republicans alone. And so, yeah, the Democrats don't want to lose any of their incumbents, and they do want to get uh, win some seats that are currently held by Republicans. So that's it for the federal elections. Again, this is for Albany, New York. If you're in a different state, you very possibly have a different Senate race going on. And if you're not in the Capital District of New York State, which is where the 20th district, the congressional district is, you're talking a lot of the Capital District, like Albany, Schenectady, Saratoga. Um, I think Troy is also in the district. Um, so not the whole capital region, but uh, the part with the most substantial population is. And anyway, so those are the 3 races that impact federal politics. And we also have 2 impacting state politics, which would be state senator and member of the state assembly district. And so I don't want to spend too much time in the races that are more local for me and not as applicable to everybody else. But interestingly about this one, Patricia Fahey, who's running for the Democrats and again for the Working Families Party, um, she would be if she were running for the assembly seat in the 109th district, she would be the incumbent in that race. But she decided not to. She's going for this state Senate seat. And so that's why she has endorsed Gabriela Romero to run under the Democratic line for her old seat in the assembly. And there is a little connection between the two of them. I do believe that Gabriela Romero used to work very tightly with Patricia Fahey. I think she might have even been her campaign manager, so very, very close. So of course, she got the endorsement from her. And before we get to the proposition, Prop 1, which is, I think, the most exciting part of this ballot, for anybody in New York State, they might think it's the same, unless you're just jazzed about the presidential election, which is super important too. So before moving on to Prop 1, and please do stick around for that, I just wanted to touch the more local elections fairly quickly. And those ones, again, we don't really have much choice at all going on. Mostly for all the court judges spots, we have Democrats running unopposed because they're also being endorsed by the Working Families Party, except for the one family court judge spot right here. And for DA, for district attorney, you might, if you are local to Albany County, you might notice that our current DA, David Suarez, is not on the ballot. That's because he lost the Democratic primary to Lee Kindlin there. So if you want to vote for David Suarez, you're going to have to write him in. And so David, David, Suarez, Soares. If you want to, and you're going to need to get the spelling right if you want to write in a candidate. Or, of course, you could vote for Lee Kindlin, who beat him in the primary, or the Republican Ralph Ambrosio. And so that's it for the local races. Now let's get to the proposition, which is, of course, it's the only proposition on the ballot this year, which is why it's known as Proposition 1, aka Prop 1. And so it's actually proposing an amendment to the New York State Constitution. And I've already highlighted the part that I think was the biggest momentum behind this proposed amendment is, did you know that New York State has still never codified a legal right to abortion into our Constitution? We've never made it law by adding it to the Constitution, probably because Roe versus Wade was the law for over 50 years. And so there's a federal protection. So a lot of states didn't bother putting it into their own constitutions. And it looks like now New York may be joining the ranks of the states who are making it part of their own constitution ever since the Dobbs decision that overturned Roe versus Wade. And so that's why I highlighted the part that says and pregnancy. It also protects against unequal treatment based on reproductive health care and autonomy. And that is how I read this is right to woman's autonomy during her reproductive health care, including a right to an abortion. Um, and this is sort of the same legal thrust of Roe in Roe versus Wade was it's her body, so it's her choice, right? That's almost the same thing this language is saying here in the proposed amendment. Now, uh, on top of women's autonomy and reproductive health care, they're also the amendment is also protecting against unequal treatment for other groups of people besides pregnant women, of course. Um, we have, uh, and this is another thing that surprised me, the homosexuals, we gay people are not a protected class under the New York State Constitution. Not yet. This amendment would also make that so. So it's protecting against any unequal treatment based on ethnicity, national origin, age, disability, and sex. And by sex, they don't just mean gender, male and female. They also mean sexual orientation, gender identity, and pregnancy as part of that. And so this would make transgenders folks and homosexuals protected classes under the law. And also something else exciting that it does is it's the first time there's going to be legal protection for age groups in the Constitution. So that is pretty exciting that one will not be discriminated against because they're too old, for instance. So that's pretty exciting too. So definitely the proposition is easy to vote on. You either fill in yes or no, depending on how you feel. I suppose many people would be choosing their yes or no based on the question of abortion alone, but there's quite a few other issues in here. So read it carefully, make your mind up, and vote the way you feel. And so that's it for the sneak peek at this ballot. And so we have lots of choices to make. And so I do encourage you, if you're in a county other than Albany County in New York or anywhere, to go to the website of your local county's Board of Elections and go ahead and get your own sample ballot, a nice little sneak peek, just like I did. And see, here we go, Albany County sample ballot, general 2024. A lot of county boards of elections have this available. You can download it right from their website. So I hope you found this informative, and thank you for everybody who watches my videos until the very end. I really appreciate that. And so I guess until next time, see you around. And so happy voting. And by the way, I want to encourage everybody to get out and vote early if you can, or if you have a mail-in ballot already, don't wait. Just fill it out and do it, and mail it back in. And or if not, go to the polls on November 5th. So anyway, thanks again for everybody who watches my videos until the very end. Please give this one a thumbs up, and please subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet. So see you around next time.